What is WebMUN, you ask? WebMUN 2014 will be the first Model UN conference hosted by Webster University. This conference will be a great chance for all delegates to learn about energy issues and diplomatic workflow. The conference will consist of 6 interconnected committees. Welcome to Webster Vienna Private University's first Model United Nations conference, WebMUN. It is organized entirely by students from Webster Vienna, Austria and abroad, including other European Webster campuses. This year's theme is energy issues of the 21st century. Unlike most Model UNs, WebMUN is the first to simulate the committees as close as possible to reality with a novel interconnectivity system. Through critical and unorthodox thinking by the delegates, we are revolutionizing Model United Nations. WebMUN has adopted the interconnectivity system as its operating method to implement multiple creative ideas and take several debating styles into account. Within this system, delegates will work closely with fellow representatives from the same state, as well as allies in other committees. An interconnectivity session will take place every day in order for delegates to strategize and better address the energy issues and the crisis scenario. The General Assembly is one of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations, responsible for policy making and representative of the member states. All member states have equal representation in this organ, providing a unique forum for discussion of international issues.
The 8 Millennium Development Goals that were set out in 2000 and should be met by 2015 have had varying success. While some substantial progress was achieved in poverty reduction and in developing a global partnership for development, as well as some progress in promoting universal primary education, gender equality and combating HIV, the targets of reducing child as well as maternal mortality by 3/4 were not met. Yet the biggest failure by far is goal number 7, that of ensuring environmental sustainability. Emissions of carbon dioxide have continued their upward trend and compared to 1990 have increased by 50%. Renewable water resources have exceeded sustainable limits in Northern Africa, and Western Africa is approaching critical levels. Relatively weak global environmental governance is one of the main problems of achieving the environmental goals. More binding agreements with more sophisticated measures of performance should be developed in the future.
The Security Council of the United Nations is working hard to maintain international peace and security.
ISIS is a violent criminal organization, imposing its will on territory. It already controls oil fields and electricity generation facilities. It has a formal governing structure and taxes its conquered lands. Thus, the most pressing issue must be ISIS's goal of creating a new state out of parts of Iraq and Syria. As thousands from around the world, including Europe, flock to join ISIS, it behooves the international community, through the UN, to secure the sovereignty and survival of its member states, irrespective of the regimes which rule them. Defeating ISIS will stabilize Iraq, but it will also tilt the balance in Syria's civil war in favor of Assad, and thus also secure Iran's and Hezbollah's interests there. Meanwhile, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, and Saudi Arabia each have considerable security concerns, as does Russia with its naval base in Tartus, and the US, which faces a fundamental prestige and credibility problem if it cannot stop a group born out of the Iraqi conflict from taking over a huge swath of the region and its vital oil and water resources. One thing is for certain: ISIS will be everyone's enemy if it survives.
The European Council defines the general political direction and priorities of the European Union. In 2009, it became an institution, although it does not exercise legislative functions. The Council consists of the heads of state or government of the member states.
Well, there are basically 4 options or strategies the European Council has to follow. The first one is investment into its electricity grid, its gas grid and its oil grid. That would allow the European Union to ship and transport gas and oil and electricity from one end to the other within the European Union. The second strategy is investments into research. We have not so far used the potential we would have when it comes to renewables or sustainable energy production. The third strategy the European Union should follow is a diversification of suppliers and routes. That basically means, in my opinion, that they need to invest in the so-called Southern Corridor. The energy future of the European Union is split between Russia and what is nowadays called the Middle East, and Turkey too, and the Caspian littoral. European Union needs to invest, unfortunately that will continue to fail, but South Stream is another part of this Southern Energy Corridor, and the European Union needs to allow Russia, I think, to build this, and even grant some exceptions to the common market rules. The fourth strategy the European Union needs to follow, and we see that by the day actually, because the consumers, and we all are consumers in the European Union, are feeling that, is increasing energy efficiency. That ranges from light bulbs to cars and other means of transport. That is a wide range where we can save a lot of energy.
OPEC, consisting of 12 oil-producing countries, coordinates and unifies the petroleum policies of its member country and ensures that oil markets remain stable for petroleum producers, as well as an efficient and regular supply of petroleum to consuming nations and a fair return on capital for investors.
OPEC seeks to maximize national incomes by coordinating the production and export of petroleum and thus ensure market stability. This is no easy task. With 80% of the world's proven conventional reserves of oil, it produces less than 40% of daily production worldwide. But while OPEC produced 31 million barrels a day in 2013, generating about $1 trillion in revenues, Exxon produced 2.2 million barrels a day, and together with BP, generated $800 billion in revenues. Thus, OPEC strongly influences but does not control the price of oil. For example, much of the price paid at the pump by angry consumers is tax levied by their own governments. Yet beyond its image, OPEC faces a serious challenge. It has to perform a difficult balancing act, producing just enough oil so that supply meets demand globally. Otherwise, prices will rise to the point where demand declines or the market will be flooded, both of which result in lost revenues. This means they must regularly observe the market to account both for existing demand and the performance of non-OPEC producers. This becomes all the more difficult as renewables and other alternatives, such as natural gas, enter the market and existing reserves are exhausted. Because it must consider these among other issues, OPEC members must maintain the ability to increase output in the short term on an as-needed basis, something known as spare capacity. Drawing the right balance between the member states and market needs makes for some difficult politics within OPEC itself, particularly between the biggest players, namely Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Iraq. Increased production from the latter two in the future either has to be met with decreases from Saudi Arabia or substantial growth in global demand. Given that U.S. imports are on the decline thanks to its shale gas revolution, that Iraq needs to export more to pay for its post-war reconstruction, and that Iran and the West are closing in on a rapprochement, this problem is likely to appear sooner rather than later.
The press committee is working independently from the rest of the committees. Its reporters, who represent different global news organizations, will be writing and filming during the conference. The press committee is one of the most significant committees, as it will demonstrate the influence of the media in an interconnected world.